And welcome to Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres, episode 274. Today it's a feedback session. So I've got a couple of pictures to show you, to talk through. So if you happen to be watching live, leave a comment, let me know you're here, and we can make a start. Yeah, so welcome to episode 274 of Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres. So today then is a feedback session. So a couple of photos to look at and talk about ways they could be improved, whether by approach or editing, that kind of thing. So that's really what we're going to be chatting about. If you happen to be watching live, then leave a comment. Let me know you're here. Tell you what the weather's doing. Get the chat started. I see we've got a few people in already. They're always a friendly bunch. So if this is your first time here, just join in. That'll make you feel very welcome. If you're not watching live, you can still leave a comment in the comments in the usual kind of section. Obviously, I won't be able to reply to it live, but if there's anything that sort of strikes you that you want to chat about, then do leave it. I should still be informed, and that I can respond in that as well, or it might even inform ideas for future podcasts as well. So let's take a quick look at who we've got in already. Susan says, "Hi from a rather grey and dull Kakubri. I think I prefer the cold, crisp, sunny weather." Yes, Kakubri's just a few miles down the road. Just swap that over. Yeah, just down the road from here, from Castle Douglas. And it's cold, it's overcast, it's what they call a kind of bones cold, really. It's that sort of slightly dampish, in your bones kind of cold. It's not particularly pleasant, has to be said. April says, "Greetings from a snowy Long Island, New York." Nicola says, "Hello all, it's dry but grey near Castle Douglas today." Of course, Nicola's just down the road as well. Janet says, "Hi from a chilly, snowy Mississauga, -9 degrees C, 23 centimetres of snow last week." Wow. By complete contrast, VG says, "Hello everyone from a moderately cold Chennai." Now, moderately cold in Chennai is still above 20 degrees C. I think you can correct me if I'm wrong there, VG. But I think I've heard you talk before about it getting down to about 23, 24 degrees C, which here in Scotland is a good hot summer. And that's the point whereby you're putting on extra layers of clothing, wondering if you should have installed some heating into the flat. John says, "Hello all, it's freezing cold outside, 12 degrees Fahrenheit." Now, I'm not even entirely sure what that is in centigrade or Celsius, but I know it's minus lots, so that doesn't sound great. And Marilyn says, "Hello from a sunny and chilly Colorado." So it looks like everybody over on the other side of the Atlantic is all sitting in minus temperatures at the moment. Here in this corner of Scotland, we're on probably about 2 or 3 degrees, and over in Chennai, like I said, I'm guessing it's probably in its 20s. Right, okay, so what are we going to talk about? Today then is a feedback session. Okay, let me just do a little bit of tidying up of the desktop here, move that over to there so I can kind of see what's going on. And what we're going to do is we're going to start with Nicola. And Nicola said, "I attach 2 photos." Now, let me just see if I can find these photos, and I will stick those up. So hopefully you can see that now. And so this is photo number 1. Photo number 2 is the same scene, but with a black and white conversion. And Nicola says, "I attached 2 photos, both of a nearby bridge, which I snapped with my phone recently. The water comes from a dark wooded hillside, down under the bridge and into the loch." I'm just wondering, is this one, Nicola, is this the one on Loch Ken up towards New Galloway? I think there are various bridges with lochs, with streams running under them. So it may or may not be. I don't know. Oh, she says yes, it is. Okay, I thought, oddly enough, I kind of recognise it. I think I've had a go at trying to photograph this one myself. Oh yeah, VG says 19 degrees in Chennai. So yes, nice and warm and pleasant here. But yes, for Chennai, that must be absolutely freezing. You must have your woolly gloves out and a thick hat and scarf on, I would imagine. Okay, so where are we? Nicola goes on to say, yes, "I wanted to try out the long exposure option on the iPhone and thought this might be a good opportunity. The first photo I took, I immediately converted to black and white." So this was the first version she took. "But felt the view through the bridge was too overexposed and lots of areas on the rocks and water were quite flat with the details being lost. I therefore went back to the original colour One placing a view taken from just next to the bridge to give the photo more depth. Although the colour photo has more depth, I'm still not completely sure about it. I cannot find the very first original image I took of this, so I do appreciate your working a bit in the dark with this one. As it was taken on my iPhone, the quality is not great, I'm afraid. I'm using these shots as practice. I cannot wait to purchase a new camera so I can shoot higher quality images. I'd be grateful for any input or advice. So Susan says, beautiful, Nicola, must go and find it. Fiji says, beautiful, slow shot with a slow shutter speed. Yeah, so yes, Nicola said that she's got a slow shutter speed option on the phone and she was trying to use that. So what we have here then, and there's various places, lots of places in Scotland, especially round here, where you've got these lovely old stone bridges and with some little bit of a stream running underneath it. In this case, I know the place. There's a waterfall comes tumbling down over the rocks, and then the water runs under the bridge and out into the loch. Now, these things are absolutely, you see them, and when you're there and you're experiencing it, and you can hear the water tumbling, you can look up, you can see it kind of coming down the hill, you can look out this way and you can see the big wide loch and you can see the water running under it. It's lovely, and you just go, oh my god, yes, absolutely. How do I photograph this? And so you scramble down the side and you get your phone and you try and take photos from all different angles. And it's one of these things which is incredibly difficult to successfully pull off. And it's very difficult to really understand why. But I'm going to take you through a couple of different reasons of what's going on and why it's not working to the extent in the way that you kind of think it ought to. There's bits there and you're capturing some aspects, but not every aspect is definitely going for it. Susan says, is it the Kennickburn? No, not sure about that. I thought Kennickburn was up the... Is Kennickburn not the one that goes up between Lauriston and Gatehouse, up over the top? If it is, it's not that one. This one, sorry to anybody who's not local here, but basically this is the one that I'm thinking of. If you go up Loch Ken on the left-hand side, if you're looking kind of the north-south bit of it, and it's basically down from New Galloway. And there's a bit where it just goes over a small bridge. You could practically miss it. There's a little kind of pull-in car park just across from it, and there's a lovely old waterfall goes up, which again, like I say, you'll miss if you're driving, because you've got to keep your eyes on the road because it's quite a winding, narrow road. But if you stop and you look up, you can see the incredible waterfall. So yeah, basically it's a couple of miles south of New Galloway. Right, so where were we? John says, nice shot, I like the way the bridge frames the water. So what is that in essence? I'll tell you what, let's go to the black and white version and show you essentially the first problem with it. And the first problem is, you see, when we look under the bridge at the water and we can hear the sound of the water rushing around us, and it's all a wonderful experience. And when we look at it, what we see is the water bubbling over the rocks. We see the arch, we see the stonework, we maybe see bits of light reflecting off the water and hitting the stonework. And we can hear the sounds, possibly even slight little echoes, or the quality of the sound change as the water goes under the bridge. And it's really quite magical. So we try and take a photo of the water under the bridge, just exactly as you've done here. But photographically, what happens is we end up with leading lines drawing our eye to something which isn't delivering. Tell you what, let me just try and open this with Photoshop, and I'll just do a couple of quick guidelines to show you what I mean. So if we open this picture here, in essence, there's two things going on. I'll change that to a pencil tool so that I can, yeah. So what's happening is, first of all, this bit here, let's just swap that to white, is brighter than the rest of the picture. Okay, so in a kind of dark to light, your eye gets drawn straight to the bright part of the picture. And because we're looking, the waterfall's behind us and we're looking out towards the loch, there's bright sky out here. It's much brighter part of the picture. So being so bright, our eye gets drawn to the light part, and actually as such bypasses the bit we're finding interesting, which is the water and the stonework. The other problem we have is essentially the notion of leading lines. So the line of the brick, if you look at, there's a line here, and that's pointing us in this direction, and then that's pointing us in this direction, and then even these little lines here are pointing us in this direction, and the stream itself is of course pointing us in this direction. So not only is this brighter, this section, but we've got all the lines leading us towards this bright patch. But this bright patch isn't delivering. It's not really what the photo's about. So as such, because our eye's being drawn to one part, but the photo is really about something else, it's failing to deliver. So it can be a nice photo if you sort of stop and look at it, but it doesn't instantly grab you. Our attention isn't being drawn to what is actually the key part of the narrative of what we're trying to express. Hoping that kind of makes sense. Now, the next thing you did was, so you returned to the color version. So let's pick up the color version. Now, what you've also done here is, with the color version, is, now I think you said you added in the background afterwards from a different picture. And that's partly because what would happen is because it's dark underneath, the phone will expose for the darker part of the bridge, and then the loch at the end ends up overexposed, which is of course what happened in the black and white picture. And then you've already done that, I think, and you said, you added, you went to placing a view from just next to the bridge to give the view more depth. So you took another photo from next to the bridge and then overlaid it at the back, I think is what you're saying with that. And so I was thinking about that because when I look back here, I can see there's various places where, like, you can see a line in the loch which is kind of going across the trees. And also the view at the back is sharper than some of these bits in the foreground. So I kind of figured that there must have been some kind of extra bit laid on here. However, that's fine. I can see exactly what you're trying to do. The potential problem, one of the potential problems here, well, first of all, is we still have that leading line problem. This is drawing us here, this is drawing us here, this is drawing us here, this is drawing us here. And although that's not now as bright, it's not grabbing us to the same extent, it's still a kind of there's nothing to deliver. Now, if you had an otter, a fish jumping, a duck, even somebody fishing in a boat just out on the edge there, everything's then leading your eye to that part, and that's fine. However, even if there was all that kind of thing going on, you still end up with the basic problem of the fact that really what we're after is the stream and the brickwork. That's kind of the important part. And there's a bit of me kind of thinks, to an extent, you would have been better off taking it from the other side. Because if you were the other side of this, looking back up, then what would happen is you'd have the water, and then the water would be bubbling down from the actual waterfall side of it, and it would be rocks and what have you, and you'd maybe have a better sense of the waterfall coming down and then coming towards you through under the bridge. But it is a tricky one. It's a really kind of difficult one. I mean, actually, and there is just one little thing on your edit as well, is one of the things I found as soon as I looked at this is it looks to me like, and I get slightly distracted by it. Hang on a second, let's just put another line here. This line here, where the curve of the inside of the bridge reaches the flat, creates quite a strong line. But then that line also joins up exactly with where you've got the headland or the hills on the other side of the loch. And that kind of creates this line that just cuts through the middle of it like that. And it just sort of, it's one of those things where, you know, if that headland had been slightly higher or slightly lower, or maybe, well, maybe not lower, because then you would have hit the other line of bricks. You wanted it maybe slightly higher just to kind of feel that it wasn't creating this long line. I do get what I mean with that. Interestingly, with your black and white photo here, which feels too bright, if you go back and you turn this one to black and white, you can actually, I think it makes it slightly more interesting. So if I just straightforwardly go to hue saturation and desaturate, but that flattens it. So what I might want to do is I want to go to the brightness contrast, take the contrast, and then increase the contrast, something like that. And now the contrast is allowing that more shadow, more light to really give that kind of texture into it. Now it's also made it slightly bright, sort of some bits are a bit darker. If I take the levels, we can see that it's down in the histogram on the right, that it's quite lost here. So I kind of want to lighten that, but not blow out everything. So I'm now going to mask. I'll go back to a brush tool on this and have this in black. I'll put that at, yeah, about, say, just 50%, so I can, and then just take down some of those highlights just there, maybe a little bit up there. And I think what happens then is if I, so let's just group those together, then actually as a black and white photo, I think it's got, you can look, this is the one that you did in camera as such on the phone, and this is taking the color version and converting it to black and white. And I think there's something slightly more interesting about this, because it's now the texture at the back here, the trees at the back are kind of allowing for the blocking. In the color version, we're aware that much more of the world beyond the other side of that arch. And so our eyes are constantly getting drawn to it. But when we actually put it in black and white, it does, these trees and your little bit of extra landscape do kind of block it a little bit. And it allows us to kind of come back maybe and look a little bit more at the picture itself. So it's a very tricky one, this, Nicola. I don't know, there's limits to how far you can take fixing this particular photo. There's a lot, I mean, I do quite like it like this in the black and white. I mean, other options are, you see, there's something about the color on this as well. And I know you will have just used some kind of preset color thing. The color doesn't fully convince me. There's the greens have got bits of blue in it. The yellows have got orange. The color scheme doesn't quite fully feel that there's something odd about the color. Maybe it's just my screen. I would maybe play around with other color shifts as well. I mean, other options here. I mean, if you've got Photoshop, then there are literally thousands. If we go to Camera Raw filter, over on the right here, so let me just nudge that over here a little bit. This little one, we've got two overlapping circles, presets. You can click on that, and there are thousands of portrait, sky. I mean, ones that I sometimes call this cinematic. So you see, do that, and it really changes it to. Now, I wouldn't recommend it for this one. So we've got lots of different. I mean, that one quite sepia brown paint, kind of interesting. Sometimes though, you can get a bit too caught up in the fact that there are these lovely, wonderful presets, but actually it can move you too far away from what it is you're trying to do. But you can play around somewhat with looking for different color schemes as such until you find something that you think, oh, you know what, that does it for me. And maybe if you go for something like that, which I think is overkill, but then you take your opacity and drop it back, and so you end up with a blend of the two of them, something like that. You can kind of end up with something fairly interesting too. So yeah, watching your color scheme is one of those things as well. Either your color is being used to try and create a sense of realism and naturalism, or you're using your color scheme specifically to try and create an otherworldly kind of feel to it. So lots of but the way you decide to go about that has to be a personal choice as to what that is. But to go back to that notion then of the black and white, and I think what we did with the black and white here by creating a kind of harsher black and white, a sort of more contrasted black and white, but also allowing for that kind of extra bit in the background, maybe helps out a bit. So I don't know if that really how like I say, I kind of feel, Nicola, that the problem is these kind of photos, because as I said at the beginning, we're there. We look through the bridge, we look under the tunnel, we have the 360-degree view, we have the sounds, we have the smells, we have the light, we have all this kind of stuff. And it's really difficult to try and capture just in a sort of flat two-dimensional image. And the problem with looking through the bridge is primarily one of leading lines. Everything draws your eye to what's at the other end of the bridge. Whereas what we're really wanting is to try and reflect the fact of what's actually under the bridge, that sense of being under the bridge, that sense of the water and stonework. The view through to the other side is almost incidental. You only need enough of it to know that there is a view through to the other, that it's a tunnel and not a dead end. But you don't want that view through to the other side to be dominating. And as soon as we sort of stick our camera there, it becomes dominating because the lines lead us to that point and the other side tends to be brighter. And that's why when I say if you were actually at the other side of the picture, if you were at the far end over here looking back up the way, because you've then got the waterfall or the rocks coming down, that would mean that the back part of it wouldn't be as light. You could just allow to maybe highlight a couple of the bits of the rock or the way the water's falling on the rock. So there's a bit of interest there, but it's not the key aspect of what's drawing your attention. But it is very difficult. But if you back up that way, if it's one of these regular runs you do on your bike or anything like that, I think it's worth going back to again and again and again. And sooner or later, at some point, things are going to start to click and you will find the spot that works under the right weather conditions, under the right light conditions, and also, I mean, the other thing I know about that particular burn is the amount of water going through it varies massively depending on the amount of rain we've been having as well. So of course that can make a huge difference to it too. So yes, thank you very much for sending that one in, Nicola. I hope everybody sort of found something out of that. I hope you've managed to get something out of that as well. Right, comments. Looks like there's been a few since I last turned around. Okay. So very pretty. VG said, hang on a second, what have we got here? Okay, yeah. But basically, VG said, you mean to say waterfall when you pass by it, you should definitely make it to Chennai. Just long beaches and filled with people and more people. Yeah, so it is. It's essentially, you've got a waterfall coming down the hillside. The water then runs into the loch, but before it gets to the loch, there's the road bridge goes over the bit of stream that lays out. So if you park and then walk to the edge of the bridge, look this way, you see the waterfall, look that way, and it looks out to the loch. Hope that makes sense. Susan says we're a bit short of people in my part of the world, VG. I've just been for an hour's walk and met no one. And VG says, can we swap places? Need some peace. Where are we? Oh, Robert's joined us. Says, howdy all from a very cold North Texas. I'm glad you could join us, Robert. Susan says, don't think she will switch, VG, rather like the peacefulness of the area. Well, having said that, I think I would enjoy the warmth of VG. April says, yeah, she would enjoy the warmth, but also wouldn't like the massive crowdedness of it, really. Meg's joined us, says hello, everyone. Susan liked the black and white version. And where are we? Oh, Nicola says, really helpful, lots of good suggestions, and lots of hi Megs, hi Roberts, hi Aprils, and all that kind of thing going on. Okay, so, yes, thank you for sending that one in. Quick reminder then that if you find the podcast useful, interesting, entertaining, and would like to support them, then buymeacoffee.com/Kim Ayres is one of the ways you can do it. Also, at this point, don't forget to like the video. If you can click like on it, it does help the algorithm somewhat. Occasionally, I think it even then appears in some people's feeds while we're going out live. But, you know, there is always the hope that we will try and attract more people into this wonderful little community of ours. Right, okay. Yes, if you've not done the subscribe anyway, but yes, do click the like. As long as you're liking it, I suppose. I don't want to force anybody into clicking like under false pretenses here. No guilt trips. Just a reminder of the usefulness of and the social media world we live in, that likes become a bit of a currency, as into trying to get the algorithms to understand that we're worth watching. Right, okay, so next up then, I've got for you, because I didn't have actually, although it's a feedback session today, I didn't actually have many people send stuff in. Nicola was one. Now, the next one I've got is pictures of a baby crow. And this one says, "Hi Kim, long-term fan of the show. In fact, I've watched every single episode, but I've never submitted anything for critique. Anyway, last spring, back from the back window, I saw a baby crow perched on an old door lying in the garden. So if I just click this, then what you can see here is baby crow sitting on an old door in the garden." Comment goes on. "I quickly grabbed my camera and fired off a few shots from the window. It's not exactly award-winning photography, but I thought there might be something worth looking at. But I've never been sure what to do with the shots I've got. I've included a few of the ones I took. Could you please help me pick one and edit it into something passable? Many thanks, Kim Ayres from Castle Douglas." So yes, confession, it's me, right? With the lack of images being sent in, I was going back through some old photos and I thought, yeah, you know what? I came across this folder of images. I remember this, looking out the back window, and there was this young, fluffy baby crow sitting there out the back window. And it was just sitting, it wasn't moving. So I thought, oh, right, okay, that's great. So I quickly ran off, grabbed my camera, shoved the zoom lens on, came back down. It was still there. And I started firing off a whole bunch of shots. But I wasn't really sure quite what to do with it. There's a limit. I didn't dare step outside of the house, because that would have frightened it away. You can see the light fairly dull. The background isn't that great. So I took a bunch of photos because it was exciting seeing a baby crow, but I never really knew what to do with it. And so basically it's just sat in the folder. It might not even have been last spring. It might have been the spring before. So it's been sitting in my folders for anything from 19 months to, or whatever, however long. So I thought, well, okay, given the fact that this week Nicola's the only one who sent in a photo, I thought, well, what if I was to submit a photo to this podcast? What would it be like? How would I go about it? So this is my attempt to critique me. But I thought what might be interesting in this, though, is that you see how I go about selecting something. So what I've got here then is I've done about 10 photos. So like I shot off this one. Then I kind of zoomed in a bit closer, kind of got closer to the window, hoping I wasn't going to frighten it off. Then it's sort of, I'm making a couple of adjustments to exposure. It's sitting there. I quite like the fact that it's turned its head. And then I thought, well, actually, I'm not quite so keen on this straight on. What if I turn it? So I moved over to the side of the window and shot back, getting a bit of the coal bunker in there. But I quite like the idea that it's bringing this flower into play here as well, and just trying to get a little bit more of a sort of sense of an angle, a little bit of dynamism, a little bit of diagonal into it. And then it's sort of still moving about, and it turned around and it's sort of flapping its wings. And I quite like this, except that when you zoom in, that bit's sharp, this bit isn't. You can't really see the face. It would have been great if it was doing that but facing me, but it didn't. And then this one, we're kind of there, turning, looking sort of at the camera. And then this one, I thought, oh, okay, actually, you know what? So I think actually out of this selection, the one that I like the best is the one where it's calling out for its mother. It's got its mouth open. It's not super sharp, but it's not far, it's not bad really. Now, the key thing here is that this is never going to be an award-winning photo. This isn't going to be something which I'm going to go, woohoo, look at me, I'm going to win first place on Photo Crowd or Guru Shots or anything like that. But at the same time, there's something slightly satisfying about capturing this small baby bird. And I think that there's almost sort of something that kind of, it's not, I'm going to say go off on a tangent, but it's not really a tangent, because I think this is a really important thing about photography, is we can very often kind of feel almost like, unless our photograph is perfect, or unless we feel we're going to get it to be perfect once we've done the editing to it, it's almost like it's not worth taking. It's like but that kind of attitude, it's almost like if you're a runner, it's like feeling, well, if you can't break the Olympic record every time, then it's not worth doing the running. And it's just not true. I would say it's closer to playing an instrument. Now fine, if, so you play the guitar or you play the fiddle. Maybe you're not playing like an absolute virtuoso top performance that was ever done. But there can be an enjoyment in the playing. There can be pleasure to be had even playing at a lower level than the absolute best. Even if you're short of the absolute best, it's still fun to take part. With photography, as I've always said, that every photo that you take that doesn't work is still really important. It's because that's the bit where you learn. Actually, the photos that work the best, the ones that, you took it and it worked, you get the praise for these things, absolutely, but you don't tend to learn anything from it. You learn from the ones that you got wrong, because you took a photo and then it wasn't quite working, so you made a shift. Just like, so I take a photo, I realise I'm a bit far away. I move closer, I take another photo. It's moving. I take a couple more photos, hoping to get it in a more interesting position. Then I realise that, well, maybe actually if I shifted, even if it's not giving the best pose, actually maybe I can create more shape out of the background. So I move. So every single photo I'm taking is moving me closer to something that's more interesting. Now, I might never get to a point whereby it becomes the greatest photo ever, but it doesn't matter. The act of trying to capture something interesting is improving my photography. It's improving my eye. It's improving my sensibilities of my understanding of what's going on, my understanding of how to create a narrative. But at the same time, okay, so I go through all that and I've learnt lots. But I can still get a photo out of it that, like I say, might be kind of personally satisfying, or might do for some little shot, some little competition which says baby animals or something like that. And it's not necessarily, like I say, it's never going to compete with a cute puppy or a cute kitten or a baby hedgehog, I mean, a baby crow, it's fun, but guaranteed, if there was a photo crowd competition saying baby animals, it would be either a baby hedgehog or a kitten or a puppy that would win. Baby crow doesn't stand a chance. But at the same time, I quite like the baby crow. So I could still have a little bit of fun with it. Nicola says, never seen a baby crow before. They're quite cute. No, I hadn't really seen one either. Only, maybe kind of sort of sent something way up in the trees. Never seen one so close. Oh, Nadia's joined us, said, sorry I'm late. We'll catch the beginning later. Yeah, excellent. I just realised, actually, Lisa said I like this one too, and I can't remember Lisa saying hello earlier. So, oh no, you did. You said good morning all from a cold and wet Maryland. Sorry, missed that one. Oh, Lisa says, I feed crows the peanuts every day. Oh, okay, cool. So let's go back then to our crow photo. So what are we going to do with this? So when I look at this, okay, so I thought this was worth taking you through some of the steps. I've got something in here. And like I said, this isn't going to be good enough quality to blow up and stick on the wall A2 size, but it could be good enough to be able to put in for something like a Photo Crowd, Guru Shots, Viewbug kind of picture. So I need to just improve it enough. Now, when we've got it this size, when we've got it full size, obviously it's too small. The actual crow itself is kind of lost in amongst the background. And if I put the image in this size, it would be no good. So what I will do is we'll go Now, I've got the raw file here, so let's open up the raw file and just make a start on this. And so just to get it started, there's although it's taken 160 ISO, but we've zoomed right in, there is a little bit of noise. And more than that, what I'm trying to think of ahead here is I want to be able to bring out more detail in those feathers. So I am going to, well, first of all, you see, if I do auto, it's actually darkening things. It's creating a bit more contrast to make the whole picture look better. But I want to come back to that. So I'm just going to bring the shadows up a little bit so I can get a little bit more detail into the feathers like that. Maybe even bring the exposure up a fraction. Because I'm going to do stuff with it in a little bit. Then what I'm going to do, because that's then increased the noise a little bit, if I go to detail, and I'll just use the denoise here for the moment. I could, if I play around with the luminance, it's going to make it maybe just a little bit too blurry. Camera Raw has the denoise option, so I'm going to use it. Obviously, this because I'm using the raw file on quite a big picture. This you know, it's a big 45 megapixel. Now it has actually made it a little bit slightly blurrier, so I'm going to pull that down a little bit. No, sorry, not this. I've done that the wrong one. Let's go back to the denoise. I'm going to pull the denoise down a little bit until I get, yeah, something like that, I think. Now I'm going to open that just to give us as our base image that I know that I can play around with a little bit more. So now the next thing I've got to do is I've got to try and find the crop. And there's no point in all this space over on the right here is kind of completely wasted. Most of this space down the bottom is also wasted. We don't need a great big chunk of coal bunker either. So let's just do an immediate kind of pull this in closer, something like that. Now, from here, I don't want to lose the flower. I kind of want the flower in a bit. I like that little splash of pink here. So I'll pull that over a little bit. I realise then that the bird is still fairly small. So let's come up a little bit more. Now, there is a little reflection here as well, which I quite like that in the glass. So I don't want to completely lose that either. The crow is now kind of getting to the point of thirds. That's okay. I quite like that. But to begin with, though, the other thing is, though, I like these flowers here, but there's a bit of a big gap between the flower and the crow. So I'm thinking what I might do is actually shift these over a little bit, bring them into the picture. So I'm not going to crop any deeper than that at the moment. Now what I'm going to do, and I will crop in a little bit more in a minute, but before I do that, I'm going to take this, I'm going to copy this bit, I'm going to copy that and paste it onto a new layer. I'm then going to slide this over so that I can get this closer to it. Now, what I might just do is reduce the opacity so I can see exactly where the new flower is going to end, because I don't want it overlapping the actual wooden frame there. But if I take it to something like, I'll bring it up close like that. Now what I can do is I will mask it, and then I need to put that back up to 100%. And I can start painting the door back in. In fact, actually, I can even leave a little bit of overlap there, which I quite like. Paint the crow back in, get rid of that bit there. And I quite like that. So now what I do is I can come here and pull this into this bit. Now that I've brought this in closer, I want a better, different kind of crop. I can bring this a little bit higher. Again, not so high that I lose the reflection. Now I need to bring that a little bit lower. I don't need much more than about that on top of it. We've gone quite cinematic. Crow's quite central. So I can now bring this over, place it in that kind of rule of thirds. And roughly then, I think we're looking at something like that as a composition. And there's a little bit of, you're judging it by eye, you're just trying to kind of create something like that. So now I can hit enter. And now I think I've got I quite like that as a composition. So now what are we going to do about improving the composition? Well, one of the things we notice for a start is the bird is still fairly soft. The background's fairly soft. The background is light. This coal bunker is really quite bright on the pane of glass. So there's these other bit like we talked earlier about with Nicola's, when you've got that light patch at the end of the tunnel under the bridge, it's drawing your eye. So what's happening is the light patch of the coal bunker, the reflection and that little corner are drawing our eye away from the crow, which is already fairly dark. So there's two things that I'm really thinking about what I want to do. First of all, I want to add more texture and contrast into the crow so that our eye gets drawn to it. And what I also want to do is kind of darken down the area around it, but not so much that it looks unnatural. Okay, so different ways we can go about this. So first of all, what I'll do is I'll select all of those and, no, wrong one. Copy all of those, paste it onto, yeah, it's still doing the wrong thing. Copy, paste, nope, select all, copy, paste. That's what I'm trying to do. Okay, so I've now got a full version of the different layers merged together. Could have flattened it as well, but I'm just trying to keep the original in case I need to return to it. So what I will do now, let's go to, I'll open this in Camera Raw, and I think the first thing I will do is I want to try and get the texture on this baby crow right. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So this is what it's all about now with texture. So if I click Auto, no, maybe come back to that. Okay, so let's go to the effects. What I want to do is I want to increase the texture. So you see we're getting much more out of the feathers out of that, maybe a little bit of clarity. And now this bird is really kind of coming to life a little bit. And I'm just concentrating on the bird because I'll end up masking off the rest of the background anyway. A little bit of contrast, maybe not. I've got well, maybe a touch. I think something like that. Maybe a touch more clarity. Yep, okay, so I'm going to go with that for the bird. Now, it's kind of overcooked other parts of this. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to mask that level and then paint it. So turn that to white, 100%, and paint it back in just over the crow. So we can see then that, see a little bit more on the toes here. And the crow is now looking much sharper. We get much more definition out of the feathers and it's standing out a little bit more than it did. Now, I quite like what it's doing on the wood, but we've got to be careful about overcooking the wood. So I'm going to reduce that to, that's at 40%, and I'm just going to lift the texture on the wood, maybe that little reflection there as well. So that's grabbing our attention. So now with this bit being sharper, I could even sharpen that flower a little bit there. Our attention is getting drawn here. But now I need to start thinking about darkening down the rest of it. So what I'm going to do, if I just straightforwardly go to curves, we can see the curves down here. I can grab that and essentially darken down the rest of it, except for the fact that we don't want to darken the crow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to darken that again. I'm going to use the black here, fill the mask, and now I'm going to start painting it in. And I'll paint it in again 40, 50%, something like that, so that I've got a little bit more control over it. So turn that to white, start painting that in, see what happens. Darken down that bit, maybe darken down the reflection a bit. Then I'm taking my finger off in between so that I can kind of build up the layers of darkness. Something like this. And I'm kind of starting to like this already. I think this is, so you can see if I go too far, it doesn't, you can see where the line is, but you're trying to pull it down to a point where it kind of feels just a little bit more natural. And if I even drop that down to something like 30%, then I can turn that, feather it in a little bit more, the lighter part of it. If I select all that, put it onto a new layer again, I quite fancy the idea of adding just a little bit of more kind of vignette. So I go to the optics, I go to the vignette and just darken those corners. Not completely done because it's going to look odd, but just again, you pull it in a bit and then click OK. Now, what's happened here, I'm aware, is that the whole picture has become a little bit darker. So I'm now going to go to the levels. And yes, lo and behold, down here on the right, we can see the histogram. There's a big gap here. So I can now start drawing that back up to the point whereby it starts to rise up again. Except for the fact that it's now starting to make things a little bit light here. So once again, sort of sitting around about 35% or something like that, I will mask out. I just don't want to have that coal bunker too bright, and I don't want that too bright. So I'm just kind of touching it. And basically, by and large, what we're doing is we're lightening bits, darkening bits, trying to find our little patch where what we want to stand out is standing out. So the eye is getting drawn to the place we're trying to get to. So ultimately then, I kind of figure I quite like that. I think so. If we then say, let's group all those together, so we can see that we've gone from that. So that was our first level of crop to that. Okay. Or if we want, we can go to, that's the original photo. And out of that, we've then created this. And this now, I think, gives us much more that feeling of, this is what I was trying to create. When I'm standing there and I can see this little baby crow hopping along the wood, cawing for its mother, this was the experience that I had. The camera then wasn't giving me the experience that I was having. So I've now edited the image to try and reflect it as I felt it to be. My eyes were zooming in on the baby crow, and the rest of it was fading out. I had a sense of flowers in the garden. I wasn't thinking about the big gap between them, because when you look at the original photo, the gap between the flower and the crow is maybe, what, a quarter of the width of the picture, maybe even a fifth. But when you zoom in like that, suddenly the gap between the crow is, it's half the width of the picture. And that doesn't feel right. So when we go back here, by moving that closer, we've moved it back to, well, in this case, probably about a third or something. It doesn't feel quite so spacious, or too far apart. And the flower then is moved its way back into the sense that we're into a garden picture out of this. So I hope that kind of all makes sense. You can see there's more comments coming in here. April saying cute blue eyes. We've got a Katz has joined us. Katz Ellen Bogan says, good afternoon. What 24 to 70 millimeter did you use on your Canon? Okay, so I have it's the original USM 24 to 70 EF. Yeah, I think it's an EF mount on the Canon. After I bought it, they brought out a version 2. Now I have a mirrorless camera and I have an adapter for it, but I am seriously thinking about getting the RF version of the 24 to 70, which I think will work much, much better with my new camera. Hope that makes sense to you, cats. But welcome. Susan says, perhaps you could enter the crow into the texture challenge. This is true. We have our texture challenge next week. Stick around. I will talk more about that. Yes, but if I was really to talk about put it into the texture challenge, what I would want at that point would be something like this close up, where you're seeing all the texture of the little feathers. Now the problem is this photo is then cropped in so far that the quality isn't there. So yeah, wouldn't really work. I mean, it is a beautiful texture on the baby crow, but I wasn't close enough. My zoom wasn't close enough to be able to really bring out the full texture on that. Marilyn says, looks great. Vijay says, lovely edit. Yeah, Robert, a couple of people chatting to cats there. Nicola says, really like this, Kim. Some good suggestions here. Okay, excellent. Right. So, I hope you all found that interesting. Apologies to cats now that you have kind of turned up pretty much towards the end of the podcast, but once we're finished, you can always go back and check the beginning. This is also episode 274. Not that I'm suggesting you sit down forever now and go back and watch all 273 previous episodes, but there are an awful lot sitting here on my Kim Ayres YouTube channel that you can go and dive in and dip in and out of and just scroll back through. There is an Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres playlist, which you will actually find in the description comments on this and most of the videos. So you can click through to that, get to the playlist, and then you can scroll back through, see if there's anything of interest. Now, one of the things we are going to be talking about then is next week. So let's flip over to here. No, not that. What am I trying to do? Yes, that. Okay. So next week we have the texture challenge. Okay, so last week, episode 273, I went in depth about the notion of texture and how we can use texture in a photo. And sometimes what we can do is we can make the photo about texture. And if the photo really is about texture, how do we go about that? And I talked quite in depth about the notion of how we use light, whether we want to be getting in close, whether we want to be comparing it to having more than one texture so that the rough seems even rougher next to the smooth, which seems even smoother because you've got the comparison, all that kind of stuff. So last week's episode, 273, full of lots of great information. And all of that is ready for the texture challenge, which is in next week's episode. So today is the 18th of January. Next week, 25th of January, we're going to have the texture challenge podcast. So for that, I need you to send me in your texture-based image, just one per person. And the email that I've set up for sending in images or questions or anything else now is kimayrespodcast@gmail.com. Just the only thing you have to double check is that you spelled Ayres right, because some people spell Ayres a slightly different way. They get the R and the E the other way around, in which case you'll never find it and I'll never receive your entry. So double check, but it's written across absolutely everything. Just double check the spelling. Anyway, kimayrespodcast@gmail.com. Send me your image, tell me a little bit about your image, and then next week we'll go through all the entries into the texture challenge, and we'll hopefully be inspired by each other's images and see and get ideas of what we can do with our own photography, see how other people have approached the very same idea. On top of that, sites like PhotoCrowd, ViewBug, Guru Shots and what have you, texture is one of the, you very often get a texture challenge. They crop up every few weeks or every month or so. So the more that, in fact, I've got a funny feeling there might even be one on PhotoCrowd at the moment. Worth double checking anyway. So lots of information to find out to put into the online competitions. So hope that's all making plenty of sense. Right. So yeah. Last little reminder, if you're enjoying these podcasts, would like to support them, then buymeacoffee.com/Kim Ayres is one of the ways you can do it. But also invite your friends, tell other people what's going on, and you can certainly have a bit, we can kind of grow this fun community of ours. Right, okay. Oh, Nadia says, going to give you a quick heads up, warning, look away from my submission next week to VG. All right. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so whatever Nadia's sending in has presumably realised that is something VG's responded to in the past that she's not quite so keen on. Now, was that snakes? Can't remember. Be interesting to see what you send in, Nadia, anyway. Right, okay, general bits of chat saying, have a good week, everybody. So thank you then very much to Nicola for sending in her image. Thank you to me for sending in my image. I hope you found that interesting anyway. Continue to send me your questions, send me your images. If you would like to send anything in for feedback for the next feedback session, same email address, send me your image, tell me what kind of feedback you're looking for, tell me what your sticking points are, and I will do my best to help you improve your photo or improve your understanding of how you might go about it differently if you were shooting again. So with all that, thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you all next Sunday. And don't forget to send me your texture images. Either send them to the podcast or put them in the Facebook group as well as another option. Get them to me by Friday, though, because I still have to have time to put these podcasts together. Saturday morning at the absolute latest. But I look forward to seeing what you come up with. Take care. Cheerio. Bye-bye.